So we really appreciate it. So I'm State Senator Ethan Corson, really privileged to represent Northeast Johnson County in the Kansas Senate. For folks, just to give you a sense of our district boundaries, so we go from the Wyandotte Johnson line on 47th Street, and then we go out to about 95th Street, and then we go state line to about 6 blocks west of Metcalf. So we've got all those kind of municipalities, those smaller municipalities in Northeast Johnson County. Prairie Village being the largest city that we represent all of. And then we also represent part of Leawood and part of Overland Park. So this, I'm really excited and really honored that this is our 60th consecutive monthly town hall. So that is 5 straight years of having a town hall every single month. And I really do want to say though, I take no credit for that. The credit really is to our great delegation, my colleagues who are willing, when we started this, were just enthusiastically willing to partner and to do this. I mean, we really do have just great representation in this part of Johnson County. They're really privileged to work with them. And the fact that they are always so willing to give up a part of their Saturday morning to be with here means a lot. And it's something we should take for granted because it's not something that you would see all around the state. And I also think a lot of the credit belongs to all of you. When we started this, we really had no sense of what the level of interest would be. We just sort of started it because it was really important to me to provide a forum for constituents to come in, ask questions, hear what I'm working on, how I voted, why I voted a certain way. But I really didn't have a sense for how well attended it would be. And so to see what it's grown to being, my dream is always to need a bigger room, and we finally got to where we needed a bigger room. And so it's really a credit to our area that we have so many folks who are really taking citizenship seriously and really want to learn and to know about what all of us are doing and what's going on at our state government, our county government, and with our State Board of Education. So thank you for making this possible, because we've really continued this because there is such a great demand in our community for it. And it's a real privilege to represent folks who are so engaged civically with what's going on. So this is our annual legislative session preview. So the Kansas legislature, I don't want to ruin anybody's holiday, but the legislature will be back in session January 12th. So I don't want to put coal in your stockings, but we will be back on January 12th. And I would say, at least for me, kind of coming at this from a Senate side, I'm interested what my other colleagues have to say. Usually at this time of year, I have a pretty good sense of the major issues that I think the legislature will be tackling. So this will be my 6th session, and I will say out of my 6 sessions, this is the session that I'm going into with the least concrete understanding of what I think the legislature will be tackling. So I do want to talk about some of the things, though, that I think will be on the horizon. I want to leave the redistricting portion to my House colleagues, because I do think that will come up. I think on the Senate side, there probably are the votes to have a supermajority that would support new maps. And so I'm anxious to hear what my House colleagues think about what's going on in their chamber. A big issue that I want to continue to just put on folks' radar as you're having conversations in our community that I think hasn't yet had the attention that it deserves is that our current school funding formula, which is the school funding formula that has allowed us to, and I say this knowing that there are still challenges in special education, but has allowed us to, in terms of base aid to schools, fully fund our public schools the last 7 years, every year that Governor Kelly has been in office. It has allowed us to get out of what was a decade of litigation over school funding. So this is the formula that the Kansas State Supreme Court said this is adequate and this is equitable, which is the constitutional parameters that the legislature is required to meet. I mean, we are a state where that is in the Constitution, that school funding has to be adequate and equitable. The Supreme Court said that this formula meets that requirement. That formula is expiring at the end of 2026. So we put together a legislative task force that was supposed to be looking at the new formula. The hope was that we would have a new formula that the legislature could approve but by the end of this session. So we wouldn't be going into the end of 2026 without a new formula. That is very unlikely to happen. So we likely will not get that formula in place this legislative session. But I do think that it's critically important that we talk about this in terms of the need of making sure that we have a robust school funding formula in place. What I would like to see, and what I think a lot of the educators that I've talked to would like to see, is just a reauthorization of the existing formula. That formula is working reasonably well. No formula is ever perfect, but it's something that our districts have come to understand. They are working with, our school boards are working with. And so I think it's not the time where we need to be making major changes, but I do think there is a desire among some colleagues to make those changes. So I just would encourage us to monitor that as we continue to go. I was in Wichita this week, and I toured a school in Wichita and met with the superintendent there. You know, Wichita is 80% free and reduced price lunch. And so really need to have a school funding formula that takes into account the unique needs of every district, which our current formula does try to do. I mean, I've also met with superintendents in Holcomb and Garden City, and their needs are very different from Wichita, right? Wichita, dense, urban, suburban area. Holcomb, more rural, sparsely populated area. And the formula does a pretty good job of trying to capture those differences. And so that's something that I want us to keep an eye on, because I think folks are comfortable that things are going well in our schools, which they are, but there is this risk of really backsliding if we don't get a strong school funding formula into place. I would expect that we will see something on property tax. I was disappointed, as I know a lot of my colleagues were, that I felt like the 2024 elections, everybody was very focused on property tax and was promising to, if you elect me, I'm going to really tackle property tax. And we did actually very little as a legislature on property taxes. So I would think that there would be some property tax legislation. I think the question is going to be, in what form does it take? Is it something that will respect local control? Is it something that's going to continue to allow our cities and our municipalities to make appropriate spending decisions based off the needs of their constituents? So I would expect some property tax legislation. I think the question is what shape it will take. I've introduced several bills, which I'm glad to talk about, that I think would be positive in terms of property tax reform. And then a big issue that I think the state is going to face is the issue of healthcare. And I think a lot of this is being brought on by HR 1, by the federal bill that was passed this summer, because that is really going to impact Kansas. We're really going to start to see that as we move into 2026. And I think it's going to be in a very negative way. One example is that healthcare for folks who get it on the exchange is going to go up very considerably after the first of the year because of the expiration of the subsidies. So 200,000 Kansans get their healthcare from the exchange. They are expected to see a significant premium increase without those subsidies. It's expected that at least 14,000 Kansans will actually lose health insurance and have to go uninsured because they will not be able to afford to pay the premium increase. We're expected as a state to lose $150 million just in 2026 alone in terms of federal funds that we would normally get. And then, some folks rightfully so ask the question of, what can the state do to try to stem some of these folks who are uninsured and try to shore this up? And I think the answer is that we want to do everything we can. But these programs like Medicare, Medicaid, they really are designed to be federal programs that are in large part funded by the federal government. And so, Kansas and really no state has the reserves where we're able to just step in and say, we will just make up dollar for dollar all of this difference. So I think our work in the legislature is going to be I hope our work in the legislature, my work in the legislature, I think my colleagues' work in the legislature is going to be to focus on, with the resources we do have, how can we most effectively utilize them to try to help the largest number of Kansans. But there will undoubtedly be people who are unfortunately negatively impacted by this and who we won't be able to help. One of the things that we need to do in the legislature, we've talked a lot about, I've expressed my frustration about the lack of Medicaid expansion, which I think is just a moral and economic issue for our state. I think this session is going to be focused largely on protecting the coverage that we do have. Speaker Hawkins in September said that he wants to make significant cuts at the state budget. And one of the things that he floated was cutting $200 million out of the state Medicaid program. And so I think it's going to be incumbent upon all of us to try to protect the existing care that we do have under the state Medicaid program from further cuts. And then the last thing I'll say that is somewhat of a mixed bag in the sense of Kansas is expected over the next 10 years because of the federal bill, H.R. 1 that passed, to lose $1.6 billion in Medicaid funds because of the cuts to Medicaid. One thing that did come out of that bill is a $50 billion rural healthcare transformation fund. So it's $50 billion over 5 years, $10 billion a year. And that money goes out to all of the different states to try to provide some funds to improve rural healthcare outcomes. Now, to be clear, the amount of money that Kansas is going to get is well short of what we would get if we just hadn't done the Medicaid cuts. And so it's not really something to celebrate because we are still a net loser, right? I mean, and all states are net losers. I mean, whatever we get from this $50 billion fund is going to be less than we would have gotten had the bill just not been passed in the first place. But Kansas has submitted an application for those funds. Governor Kelly, as you would expect, and her team put a lot of time and a lot of effort into trying to make Kansas's application as strong as possible. And we should hear before the end of the year how much that Kansas will get in that first round of the $10 billion. And so we will have some funds to try to help rural healthcare, and Governor Kelly does have a strong plan as best she can to try to manage that and implement that. So that is something else to keep an eye on. I will stop there. I want to be sure we have time for questions. And again, thank you for making this our 60th consecutive town hall. In a minute, turn it over to Representative Stogsdill.
What he said. Always good to follow Ethan. So this is going to be definitely an interesting session. And I just want to do a real quick survey first. How many of you were up at 6:30 this morning and online to make sure that you got your season tickets to the new Trump Center for the Performing Arts? No one? Really? No one? You do realize the first performance is the Kid Rock Ted Nugent Has Been tour. I think it's the only stop on the Kid Rock Ted Nugent Has Been tour. But anyway, be a little more serious here. I've spent a lot of time over the last month, especially talking with leaders in the higher education community. And just for some of you who may be new, I am Jerry Stogsdill. I represent the 21st District in the Kansas House. It's primarily most of Prairie Village and a little bit of Overland Park. And I serve on the Education Committee as the ranking Democrat, and I serve also on the Tax Committee and the Water Committee. So, which obviously I have great concern about all three of those. And I've talked with people from the leadership from Johnson County Community College, from the Shawnee Mission School District, and from several of the institutions of higher education, colleges and universities in Kansas over the last month and a half or so. And one of the things that's come out of the education arena is the attack that I don't know whether any of you see the Kansas Reflector, but it's really good thing to sign up for if you're interested in what's going on in Topeka and so on. And they had a big story just a couple days ago about Kansas Efficiency Committee, which is Kansas's version of Doge. And they are targeting DEI curricula in college classrooms. And as there's only seems to be one person in the entire country that can make the words diversity, equity, and inclusion dirty words. Those are three words that our country was founded on. Remember when we used to be proud to be a melting pot? No longer. And that is something that I think we should be very, very concerned about. And the representative who heads that committee is Representative Christy Williams. And in my personal opinion, she's the major enemy of public education, preschool through graduate school here in the state of Kansas. And to think that she's head of this committee that's looking at DEI issues is pretty frightening. And I just, out of this was an excellent story. If you can get on the Reflector website, go back and read it. But I just wanted to mention a couple things. She said her goal was to determine whether DEI creates less inclusive environments or suppresses free speech. How can diversity, equity, and inclusion suppress free speech, for crying out loud? But anyway, I just wanted to get a couple of things here that I outlined. Oh yeah, she played an anonymous video clip containing mention of services for LGBTQ people. Wouldn't give the origin of where it came from, so it was just a clip that she played. She included descriptions of requisite English courses at Kansas State University, which she viewed as DEI language. So apparently she has become the expert and the purveyor of wisdom on DEI and what in our higher education curriculum and so on. I always thought that college was kind of a place where you could go to freely express your opinions, to learn different things, to learn about different people, about different curriculum, all of that sort of thing. And if this goes through, those days seem to be very, very numbered for us, and I think that's frightening. But anyway, I think that that's going to be some things that we are going to be dealing with in education this year. I don't think there's probably going to be a big push for vouchers. I think that's too controversial. I think the folks across the aisle realize that is not a popular issue with Kansans. And so hopefully that will not rear its ugly head again, but you never know. And also on tax committee, there will be I'm certain some kind of effort, at least by the Democrats, to try to address sky-high property taxes here in Kansas. And we've got to do something about that. That's a super big issue in my district, where they're building $1 million homes now, and people we still have that bought houses in the 1970s and 80s for $45,000, $48,000 who are practically being priced out of their homes because of property taxes. So I assume that we're going to do that. I personally have already got the revisor working. I'm going to reintroduce my bill this year to take the state sales tax off of over-the-counter medications. I think that's absolutely ridiculous that if you can afford or have good enough insurance to get prescription medications, we don't charge sales tax on that. But if you don't have good insurance and you can't afford prescription drugs on your own, we add insult to injury by adding on a state sales tax to over-the-counter medications. I think that's just unacceptable, and I'm going to really try to push that this year. It went through tax committee 3 years ago unanimously. Every single Republican, every single Democrat voted for that, and then the speaker would not let it come to the floor for even a discussion. So that's kind of gives you an idea of what we come up against sometimes. And then on the water committee, I haven't heard much from the chair of the water committee. We didn't have an interim committee that I was included on anyway on water this year. By the way, this was the first year in 10 years that we didn't have an interim committee on education either. So, but water, we've done a great job in there, and it's been a very bipartisan effort to get some good rules and regulations that will help make sure that we have an adequate supply of water and it's clean and good for use for agriculture and for drinking water and everything. And with these, the last time I did talk to the chair, there was a discussion about what in the world these new EPA requirements are going to have, what kind of a negative impact they could possibly have on our water supply here in Kansas. So that's going to be one that we're really going to have to fight to make sure that we do have enough water for agriculture, and that certainly in this part of the state, we keep our water supply clean and plentiful. And again, Water One, we are so lucky to have Water One working on our water supply here in the Kansas City region, or in actually Johnson County. So anyway, I'll let my colleagues go next, and I'll be happy to stand for questions when at appropriate time.
Hello, I'm Becky Fast, your county commissioner, and I represent Northeast Johnson County, this red area. So mainly everything inside the 435 Beltway. Commissioner Hanslake represents south of 79th. So Johnson County had big news this week, if you followed. Fred Sherman, our Johnson County election commissioner, was terminated. He made a statement that he had the choice to resign or be fired, and he chose to resign. So a year before, it's less than a year to our 26th election, this is very concerning. So I've gotten a lot of emails like, what are you doing, Johnson County Commission? I'm like, no, this wasn't us. The election commissioner in the 4 largest states serve at the pleasure of Scott Schwab, the Secretary of State. They are hired, appointed, supervised by the Secretary of State. So Kansas law has something very unusual. If you are over 125,000 people, you have an election commissioner appointed by the Secretary of State. So the other 101 counties get to, the voters, the taxpayers, get to elect their election person, who is the county clerk. So right now it's Wyandotte, Johnson, Shawnee, and Sedgwick. Douglas is at 123,000. So they are very close, and they have an award-winning county clerk, Jamie Shue. When he first ran, I think it was about 20 years ago, we were friends. I helped him run. And so they could be losing their very experienced county clerk and move to the election commissioner model. So people have asked me, so why, Becky? Why was he let go? We don't know. So on the commission, under state law, we provide the funds. The election commissioner and all the staff are county employees. And we do have a say on the budget. At one point, we didn't even really have a say on the budget. But we don't have a say on who's in that position. So we're hearing that Scott Schwab is probably going to appoint an interim person, and then there will be interview committee. The good news is Chairman Kelly serves on that interview committee, and we also, our director or designee of HR serves on that committee. But I don't know if you remember a few years ago when we had a partisan election commissioner, not a career experienced administrator. Fred Sherman had been, when I was on Roland Park City Council, I had worked with him. He was Westwood city manager, had worked in other cities, very experienced career administrator. His wife just got the city manager position at Latha. So we had a very partisan appointment, and 1 year, and I think it was August of 18, it took all night and the next day for the results to come in. Johnson Countyans are not used to waiting 12 hours to get the results, and there was just a lot of issues. And we have over 100 polling sites. I mean, we're a huge county. Fred has gone from 14, 4 advanced voting to 15 advanced voting. So not only, we have basically 2 elections you run in Johnson County, all advanced voting, which is about half of our residents advanced vote, and then the day of. So and next August is the Supreme Court election. It will be a high turnout too. So I'm really hopeful that the deputy is very experienced. Either they're elevated or somebody else who has years of experience and not a political partisan is put in that position. So the other thing that I'm very excited about, Johnson County, we just completed, I know this isn't too big, our transit plan. When I got on the county commission, one of the things is Commissioner Hanslake and I complained a lot about how could we improve Johnson County's public transit. I felt like we did everything for everyone, but it wasn't effective trying to do too much. And I said often that we put just enough money into our public transit, so it's terrible. And people didn't think it was reliable. It wasn't fast. You'd wait over an hour. There's, just many issues because we're trying to just cover a very large county. And so now, as you can see, those of you who live inside the 435 are going to benefit. You say, why are you just narrowing it inside the 435? Because we want these routes to be frequent, fast, that you don't have to wait over an hour. The Metcalf route will be every 20 minutes. And we also will have, it's called microtransit, and we've had that for several years. So, one of the things with our public transit, the lines don't go everywhere, but the microtransit then can take you to the main lines. And so Mission Transit Station is a central hub, which I'm very excited. And one of the new initiatives that we just outlined is transit to the airport to roll out in March, right before World Cup. And so it's not going to be a park and ride, it's going to be a drop and ride. You can go to the Overland Park Sheraton Center or the Lenexa Community Center. Please use it, because if we have riders and people use the system, then we can demonstrate and get more funding to keep the system. And so that will go for about 8-9 months. And it will go every 20 minutes to the airport and back and drop you off right at the gate. So really great. Another exciting thing with the FIFA World Cup, Mission is going to be a direct route to FanFest. So is Oak Park Mall, Overland Park at the Sheraton, Lenexa. So you can go to those areas, you can go to FanFest and then to the stadium. So right here in Northeast, we have one of the direct routes to the World Cup. Over 600,000 people are expected to be here from, June to mid-July. So these direct, they call them connect routes, are going to be really critical. And I'm really excited to see how people use it to get more confidence in our transit center system, and that they can see that it is reliable, it is credible, it is safe. And one of the struggles has been that we're a part of a regional system. And it's just, as a region, it's often been hard to get all the counties on board, but all the counties are on board on this FIFA Direct. There'll be 15 places across the region that you can hop on the bus and go to FanFest or go, they call it Stadium Direct. So that is another, that we as a region can work together and have a strong transit system. Jerry Rep Stogsdill talked about water. Water is a real passion of mine. I'm a rural farm kid. My family's 100-year farmers. And my family and my relatives, that's all they talk about. Water towers are having to be dig deeper. There's not water. And they're very worried about our reservoirs. So this fall, I convened a water summit, and we had over 100 people. In Johnson County, water, we have Water One, Johnson County wastewater. And you think, well, that's dirty water. Well, that dirty water goes into our streams. And we have award-winning, treating process so we don't impact our streams. And then we have a stormwater, and our Johnson County parks to preserve our water so it doesn't run off everywhere. So it was a great meeting of bringing together these three entities to how can we in Johnson County protect our water. So there is a really incredible museum exhibit at Johnson County Museum on water till January. So if you have time during the Christmas break, stop by there, and it shows the history of water in Johnson County, how we manage water, and some of the threats that we, with data centers, with Panasonic, with development residential, water is something that we have to collaborate more in the urban areas. It's not a rural Western Kansas, it is an urban too. So please go. I think more of us are educated about water, the more we can work together for the future. So thank you, and we'll call up one of my, we're not. Oh, okay. That's the most important thing in the morning is coffee, There's more coffee.
Make yourself and make your way over and get coffee.
Thank you, Commissioner Fast. Good morning, everyone. I'm Melanie Haas. I represent District 2 on the State Board of Education. That is, I guess I have a map over here, I was told this morning. Richard, which one is it? There it is. It's that one in the middle, the green section that Rhea is pointing to. That is my Johnson County area, and then I have the southern half of Wyandotte County as well. I represent 4 Senate districts. So, usually I write a list, and then as these guys are talking, I kind of go through and I just put some little numbers and reorder my list. And today, it's like a big swirly pattern of I don't know what. So, it's a mess. So I'm going to back up here real quick. The state board met twice in December. As you know, we're searching for a new commissioner. And so we had a special meeting this past week. And we had previously gone through a closed process of selecting a search firm. And so we were finally able to announce the search firm, which some of you asked about. It's HYA Associates. That's Hazard, Young, and Atia Associates. There's actually a gentleman with the firm who's from Kansas, so that's kind of fun. And one of the things that really won the board over was that they said that they would sit down with each and every board member, excuse me, and have an individual conversation about what each of the 10 board members are looking for in the next state commissioner of education. Remember that Randy Watson, our current state commissioner, has been in place for almost 11 years. He's the longest serving Kansas commissioner since that was established back in the 1960s. So we did meet this week. We had, I think, a good meeting for the most part. I tried my best to get out and talk to as many people as I could about what do you want to see in your next commissioner. And so if I haven't talked to you or if you have opinions, come and find me, send me an email. But some of the biggies were a lot. Obviously, we want somebody with experience in education, right? I think I told you that there were some folks who are interested in having a CEO come in and run our state schools. So somebody with experience in education, preferably at all levels, that they've worked in the classroom, that they've also been a school administrator. And it would be so great if we could have someone who really understands how diverse Kansas is in terms of rural versus urban and suburban. And so those are some of the comments that I made to the search firm, that these are things I'm definitely looking for. I want somebody who's an innovator. Commissioner Watson has done, I think, a phenomenal job with Kansas Redesign, going through the process of kind of reimagining what schools can look like. And I would love to have someone come in who really has experience doing that. So that was something else I called out. And really focused on student and educator voices. I think that student voice is one of the most important things. And I think it's something that, to be frank, we're not doing a good job of at the state board right now, is listening to students. I'm excited because in January, we will have the opportunity to have lunch with some of our CTSO organizations. And that's maybe one of the most meaningful opportunities that the state board really has to sit down and actually talk with students. And so I'm hoping that someone will come in, set up a student advisory committee, really involve students in the process. And of course, I would love to see the same thing for teachers as well. So the way that this process is kind of scheduled to work is the state board is going to meet all the time during the month of March. We're going to be interviewing, and then the hope is to have a name to announce in April. So we're going to have a lot of extra meetings, but I'm excited about the process. I am very sad to see our current commissioner go. I think he's been wonderful, but I'm also excited for the opportunity that it brings. I will add that during this past meeting, one of the things that the search firm asked was, and you can watch this on YouTube, they said, you can have as many organizations kind of on this list of people that we should talk to. Who are some of the organizations that you board members think should be included? And they already had a list of a lot of really great orgs. And one of our board members piped up with a partisan group of lobbyists and said, you should put them on the list. And I said, they're partisan lobbyists. They should not be on the list. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how different board members come to this process. But again, I remain optimistic. So I'll go back to the December board meeting. We went through our legislative priorities. In November of each year, we receive those. There are priorities, but they give us a list. And then we have an opportunity to kind of review them in November. And then in December, we vote on them line by line. And I think there were about 30 of them. It was a very long list this year. And we had a handful of 10-0 votes. And we also had a handful of 6-4 votes. And I want to say maybe we had one fail. So I won't try to get through the whole list. It's a very long list, but you can go look it up on the YouTube. I'm happy to send it to you. There were 3 that I think this room wants to hear about. One of them with a 10-0 vote was moving school staff employees to Capers 2. That made the list with a 10-0 vote. And I know there are a lot of people in this room that have asked about that. We're going to keep asking for it. Right now, a lot of them are on Capers 3. They just don't get the great retirement benefits that are more prevalent in Capers 2. And so we're going to keep asking the legislature to move some of those over to Capers 2. Also to reduce the wait time. So when you retire as a Kansas educator, there's actually a period of time that's up to 180 days where you cannot return to teaching in a school. And you're thinking, why would you retire and want to return to teaching in a school? But you retire, you start getting that retirement pay, and then there are opportunities to go to another district or go back into your old district in a different role. But there's a wait time for that. And because of the teacher shortage that you've heard so much about, we are again asking the legislature, can you do something about this law that prevents teachers from being able to return to the classroom in some capacity? And then finally, you've probably heard me talk in recent months, years about the school bus stop arm violation committee. We have a tremendous problem, not just here in Kansas, but everywhere. School bus pulls up, puts out the stop sign blinks. You are supposed to stop whether you are behind the bus or whether you are coming from the other direction and approaching the bus from the front. It is state law that you are required to stop your vehicle while those lights are flashing. But people run that all the time. And in the last couple of years, we finally had a student who was hit and killed by a car in Abilene because she was crossing the street and someone ran through there and hit her. So we are continuing to ask the legislature, please do something about this, have a stiffer penalty, put cameras on the buses so that someone can go back and review when someone has run through those lights, and then a sheriff or local police could review that and make a decision on whether or not to ticket them. So those are some of the biggies. The other things we talked about in December, high quality instructional materials. We had a gentleman come in with a tactile Braille American flag. So the state board signed a resolution that allows for those flags to be placed in schools free of charge. He and his organization are providing those. So that was kind of fun. And then we talked about, what's that?
How does that work?
How does it work? So it's an American flag. It's about, 9 by 12 are the ones that he brought to the board, and they have Braille on them. So the pitch was, for the first time, people who are blind, when he takes this flag into the classrooms, they can touch the flag and really have kind of the same experience that you or I might have when we look at the flag. So yeah, it was really exciting. And then we talked a little bit about school improvement days. we've got a new accreditation process in Kansas where our schools are very actively involved in meeting with other districts about how they are improving what's happening in their district. And so I got to attend a school improvement day just a couple of months ago with 5 different, they were actually some of our, it was the school for the deaf, the school for the blind, and then a couple of other special schools that sit kind of outside of the norm. And I got to listen to them talk with each other about some of the innovative things that they're doing. And so I'm continue to be pleased with that process. And so we got an update on that. And then I do want to tell you, does anybody know where Washington County, Kansas is? Okay, cool. So Washington County USD 108 just won the National FFA Agronomy Championship. They are national champs. So I thought that was so cool. I heard that on a Zoom this week from their superintendent. I was like, oh, that's amazing. I have to share that. So I've probably got a bunch of other things that I could talk about, but you're welcome to ask me questions after, and I will turn it over to whomever is next. Representative Shu.
Hello, everybody. Representative Shu, House District 25, which is in the upper right-hand corner over there. I will be very, very quick to make sure that we have enough time for questions. On the capers front, I don't see very much appetite or enough money really to be able to roll a lot of people back into capers 2. It is very, very costly to do so, but I continue to have conversations with the chair of that committee. I'm the ranking Democrat on that committee to kind of at least provide enhancements to capers 3 to make the gap a little bit smaller, to make capers 3 a little bit more adequate for people. On the redistricting front, my impression continues to be that votes in the House would be fairly short from a supermajority that they would need to override the governor on any new map. I think the Indiana map failing is very, very helpful to us. I was worried that the Indiana Senate would cave to the pressure, and then that would kind of lead to a series of events where the Kansas House would fail. But because they held strong, I anticipate the Kansas House probably holding strong as well. But that's all up to change. And then finally, I've been working, as you guys have probably heard a lot about housing stuff, mostly housing supply, but recently I've also started engaging in some landlord-renter stuff. You guys may have heard about this story in Prairie Village where there was a judgment against a resident who had to pay like $27,000 in late fees for about $4,700 in late rent. And so kind of latching onto that story, I think we need to put in some caps on how much late fees somebody can actually owe. It can't just continue to kind of accumulate like that. And I also think it's a good idea to kind of give people a little bit of leeway. So giving maybe a mandatory 4-day, 5-day grace period for people to make up that rent. And so we're looking at a couple of landlord renter stuff like that. This is a bipartisan proposal. There are Republican ideas, there are Democratic ideas out there, but we're kind of working in lockstep with each other to kind of strengthen this. The origin of this was kind of out in Gardner. There was a story about there's a condemnation of an apartment complex, and basically within 24 hours, like every resident had to get out of there because it was just so dangerous to be there. The city did not want to have to do that, but because it was so dangerous, they couldn't. And so we're just really looking to strengthen the relationship, especially with our renters, to be able to make sure that they're safe, that we can give them a place to be. Another part of the bill that I'm proposing is that it limits the number of single-family homes that a single LLC can own. I'm sure you guys have kind of heard about corporations buying up land. This limits it. It's just an arbitrary number. We're starting it at 20. It can go up or down as we continue. That still sounds pretty high to me, right? But we have to start somewhere. And this idea I really love as part of that bill too, is that if somebody is renting in a single family home right now and the owner wants to sell, it requires the owner to give that renter the right of first refusal. So I think that just kind of further ensures that that home will continue to be owned by a real person in Kansas who has a vested interest rather than a corporation. So that's stuff that we'll continue to look at. And other than that, I will turn it over to the next couple of House members and then get to your questions. Representative Ousley.
Thank you, Shu. Representative Shu. So in the, good morning. I really just came to say good morning. I don't have much to add to the conversation, but I will say Representative Shu touched on the Indiana bill failing. And I was recently at a national conference and talked to a couple of my Republican Senate and House members in Indiana. And I don't think the headlines do justice to what those members went through and their families went through to ahead of that vote. It was nasty, bomb threats and fire bombs and just terrible politics today. So I'm happy to see it fail, and I'm happy to see it fail miserably. And it does give me hope that can be Indiana can lead the way for this one. As far as my committee work since the last time we spoke, I think I can wrap it up here in a sentence. Attached is a special committee on state budget. Special committee on state budget. The draft shorthand summary of state budget committee action is attached. The draft proposal deletes $556.5 million state general fund in FY26 and $601 million SGF and FY27 from agency requested budgets. So I just received that email last night. I haven't had time to dive into it or ask questions. I don't know if that is from their last year's budget, because no enhancements were given. So I don't know if that's just a deletion of enhancements or if that is a deletion from last year's budget. I can't imagine it's a deletion from last year's budget. We won't have the governor's budget until the second or third day of session, so it'll be interesting to see what that compares to as well. And one other thing I wanted to touch on that I'm pretty sure is coming up next session, hadn't been mentioned yet. I know this group is always interested in education policy, and there's a cell phone ban bill that'll be floated around the State House next session. So our local school districts, it's my understanding, I was at the SMSD luncheon, and they said that should be a local decision. And sometimes not only does it need to be a district decision, but sometimes it needs to be by building. What's good for an elementary building might not be good for a secondary building. And, we're educating these kids. So part of that education is going to be how to responsibly use technology. So if you've got opinions on that, I'm here to hear them. And I think other than that, I can turn it over to Representative Clayton to wrap us up here this morning. Stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. The good news is that I think I'm the last one, so I'll try and make this as interesting for all of you as I possibly can. So this is what I've been up to this past December. At the beginning of December, I went to a national conference called the American Legislative Exchange Council. They tend to track a little bit more conservative. I'll actually finish up with talking about that. Then I went to the National Council on Gaming Legislative States. So that was in Puerto Rico, lovely part of the United States. Would recommend visiting there, especially in December. But I did spend a lot of the time there inside a cold conference room because there's a lot of information that we need to go over when it comes to gaming and when it comes to gaming dollars. We have some new things that are coming to light with sports wagering, in particular sports wagering addiction. I was a strong supporter of sports wagering. There has been a study that was released, I believe, by University of Oregon that has shown a strong correlation between unexpected sports losses and spikes in domestic violence. I think it's bare minimum to be against domestic violence, but given the way that some of my colleagues work, here we are. So I am on the exec board for the National Council of Gaming Legislative States, which is neither for or against gaming. It simply explores the way that gaming affects citizens, the way that it affects states, and the way that it affects budgets. And so when we have our summer conference, there will be a session examining those various correlations. And so that was some very serious work that I did. And then finally on Tuesday, I'm just glad I didn't go to jail. I subbed in for a colleague of mine on the Kansas Committee on Government Oversight. And apparently what the chair saw fit to oversee was wokeness in our universities. Or DEI. Now, what is interesting is that in Kansas statute, there is no definition as to what DEI is, right? And so a lot of times It's, if you didn't go to law school, which I didn't, but I've spent enough time in the legislature that, you sort of learn to think that way. Having a set definition for something is a good idea, because if you say, I do not like this thing and we should not have this thing, we need to know what the thing is. And if you say, I love this thing and we need more of the thing, we need to know what the thing is. If we say this thing is illegal, what is it, right? So that tends to be the ultimate baseline definition. And the chair became a bit enraged with me when I asked reasonable questions. I don't think I have ever in all of my years been spoken to in such a disrespectful manner. Although, Jarrod Ousley used to serve on a committee with this person. But basically, here's the deal. Is that you've got, and yeah, he had to put up with a lot. So someone, give him an extra donut or something on his way out. But what ends up happening is you have people who are pushing against a thing that they don't like, in this case, DEI, without defining that thing. And that is dangerous, because if someone holds power and say, I don't want any more of this, and you're like, okay, cool, no, I want to make sure we're complying with the law that you have put in place. But if they refuse to say what it is, then it is whatever the person in power says it is. And that is wrong. That is not what we do with power. We always hear that power corrupts, right? But really what it does is it reveals. So if you give someone a little bit of power and you see the way that they act, then you start running into major problems, right? So basically what has happened is that we are continuing to explore. You will see a push where they are just dancing up to outright banning certain types of curriculum without actually banning it. In fact, some of my colleagues offered the solution saying, well, maybe we can just ban curriculum in English 101 that is DEI. We still don't know what that is, by the way. And not ban it in upper level classes. Because that tends to be the thing that they're pushing, is saying, well, these people are going here to get a neutral degree and they're having to learn about things that make them uncomfortable, that's the whole reason why I spent money to send my kid to college, by the way, is to get outside and to learn about the wider world and to challenge it. But in any case, you will see this push. We're going to see a nasty push against higher ed. So, it was really unfortunate to have to deal with that type of treatment from Chairman McCarthy, but, they sure do show up in some way, place, or form. And that's not really her name. That's just the way that she's acting. We do not do censorship here in the United States. We do not say racist things and then say, I'm not racist. We do not passively aggressively quote Martin Luther King, because that's gross. We don't do that. And so they do that, but I guess ultimately what I'm trying to say is that type of behavior is unacceptable. I will not stand for it. I will continue to fight against it. So finally, what I heard at the American Legislative Exchange Council is one of the things that they are really pushing for is property tax relief, which is good because, hey, broken clock is right twice a day. I also want to cut property taxes, and I will work with anyone anywhere possible to make sure that life is more affordable for you all, because I don't know about all of you. It's a wonderful time of year, but it's also a stressful time of year as we try to give our children and grandchildren a nice Christmas, but then realize that our groceries cost $1 million. So one of the things that happens at this is that, are you familiar with the poller Scott Rasmussen? So he is, sort of similar to Gallup polls. He's more of the sort of conservative part, right? And so he got up and sort of gave a talk during the plenary session, and he always tells us what the pulse is. And this is a room full of very, very, very conservative people. Aside from the waiters and waitresses, I was probably one of the only Democrats present. And he said, it is not looking good for conservatives unless they can find a way to solve the affordability problem. And so this is great because, honestly, bottom line, I don't care who ends up winning or losing, who ends up getting put in the halls of power. What I do care about is, am I fulfilling the charge that you all gave me when you elected me last year, which was to make your lives better and to represent you and to treat you with the respect that I would treat any boss, and y'all pay me, so you're my bosses. So that is one of the things that I will continue to push for. If I see things that say give tax breaks to billionaires while increasing the prices for groceries for average people, I am not going to do that. I mean, I don't know if I represent any billionaires. Like, maybe they should call me and we'll have a talk. But honestly, I'm pretty sure that for the most part, I represent average Johnson Countyans. And so as we move forward, I think that what you're going to see is, again, a major attack on higher education, but also a lot of that is because the attack is coming on higher education because they realize they can't attack K-12 the way that they used to because we care about it too much. The people have spoken over and over again, so they're moving on to another vulnerable area. So you might need to start standing up for freedom in the halls of higher education. And they are going to say that they're trying to make things more affordable for all of you. Look at the fine print. You're sending me there to look at the fine print in tax committee, and I will do that. But understand that tax cuts don't always mean for everyone. And I prefer broader tax cuts that actually give a positive effect to all of you. So I could talk here about tax cuts and how awesome they are all day. I'm not going to do that. Everyone come up here. I don't want to make it weird. So we'll take your questions. And I hope you all have a safe and happy holiday season.
All righty. Anybody want to go first?
Thank you all for a very meaningful presentation. Lots of things we've learned. I'm Chris Roselle, and I'm from Roland Park in Reeves and Ethan's areas. I have 2 points. One, for civic education, this is great. Would everyone under 24 years of age in the room stand up so I can make sure that I'm not misrepresenting what's happening? All 24-year-olds? My point is, they're high schools, and there's also some colleges in the area. Possibly for civic involvement, it would be glorious to take this meeting to the high schools or the colleges in the area so they get a dose of, or offer it to them, so they get a dose of what civic engagement is and what our representatives are doing and how they might participate.
Before you go on, I would say most of us probably do go to high schools and colleges. Look, this forum is for this time slot, but we do go speak at high schools. I just spoke at UMKC Law 2 weeks ago.
Great, thank you. And the other thing is, I'm a public health professional and a nutrition professional. I'm not a medical care professional. When we use the term healthcare in the U.S. nowadays, since Bob Dole, we're really referring to medical care, not health care. If we did real health promotion and prevention, it would cost 1/20th of what treating preventable diseases and the top 5 diseases that result in 77% of our medical care expenses are largely preventable, and our prevention program is virtually non-existent. Our investment in medical care that we call health care is the highest in the world among developed countries with the lowest results in the world. So can we include prevention in health care? Thank you.
Come on.
Is that it, really?
Come on. Somebody make up a question.
Not necessarily a question, a couple of points of information. First, to confirm what Reed told us about the Indiana legislatures, this will sound like name dropping. I was talking to Representative Davids yesterday, and she brought exactly that point up when we talked about the possibility of redistricting in Kansas. And she has not heard anything that indicates that there's going to be a hard push on that. The second point is on Fred Sherman. When I learned about it, I sent an email to my friends who are his top two election people, Clay Barker and Brian Caskey, and I said, I hope that Secretary Schwab had nothing to do with it. I have not heard back from either of them, which I take as indicating that he had something to do with it.
Hi, Jerry Williams, Fairway City Council. Quick question. I have a very, very, very local issue, I think it is, but we took up the issue of electric scooters in neighborhoods, and I know cities around Johnson County in particular are discussing that issue, and we're all coming up with different ordinances around scooters and people under 18 years old essentially riding these scooters. And I wonder if we're at a point where at least the county should take up the issue and maybe even the state at this point. So that's my question.
I'll start. Really good question. This is something I've been thinking about a lot. I walk my daughter to elementary school every single day, and I see the exact same thing I'm sure many of you guys are seeing is these 10-year-olds on these scooters and electric bikes just rolling through stop signs, no helmets. And it's really dangerous. Like my wife is genuinely terrified of just like hitting one of them. And obviously in Leawood, we saw that did happen. Kind of in my conversations with people across the state on this, my impression is like, this is kind of a Johnson County issue, which I can pass down later. I think probably in rural areas, we don't want to kind of overregulate this. Maybe that does make a lot more sense in rural areas where they're traveling farther distances. So I don't think it necessarily makes sense statewide, kind of from a school district or a county level, maybe, but I can throw it down to Commissioner Fast on that one.
No, that's a really good question. I mean, Johnson County, we bring together planning directors, neighborhood codes director. I will bring that up. I mean, that is regulated by each city. Traffic laws are. Johnson County law enforcement, our sheriff does unincorporated, but supports each of the city municipalities on traffic when they need their backup. So I will definitely bring that up. I think that's a really good point. So thank you, because I know all the cities and the county have regular meetings. Our city managers with our county manager do. So that's a great topic for them to talk about. They collaborate and learn from each other.
Oh, I have the next question. Becky, this is for you with regards to the transportation. So are you saying it's going to be twofold in the fact that we're going to have a main bus line and then a micro bus line that's going to go to the smaller locations?
So during COVID, we piloted it called micro transit. It's door to door like a Uber, but they're in vans, so they're not as small, and they're hired, regulated van drivers. But it's very expensive. I had a lot of trepidation about it when we started. The commissioners that I started with wanted to get rid of all fixed lines and just go to an on-demand. But you don't get federal funding for the on-demand microtransit. I was supportive that it should support our fixed lines, not be instead of our fixed lines. So we're moving it more to a smaller area so we can have more frequent, less waits. I had talked to Roland Park City Councilor about having a bus stop. We have a lot of areas where we all see people sitting out in the rain, the snow. We need more in each of our cities. City councilors bringing forth, overhead stops. So this, trying to get the system to be effective, trustworthy, safe, and so that people, if we can show people in the Northeast are using it, then we can move a little further south. So the microtransit is to take people to the fixed lines and from the fixed lines to their home. Because right now you have a long ways to walk or get to your, and around 10% of people in our county do not have cars. When I started on the commission and said, we need to look at public transit, we need to improve it. And I was told from some of my commissioners, well, everyone has a car, we don't need it. Well, that is not true. And there's a lot of people that would rather not have 2 cars in their household, move to 1 car. And, for the environmental reasons or the cost, affordability. So I'm hoping, and then with the World Cup that we gain trust, and that's part of it too, is gaining trust by our Johnson County residents that it's, with the micro together with the fixed lines, it can get you to work. It can get you to go out for the evening. So.
Thank you. Good job.
For anyone on the panel, notwithstanding that many of you will be on the ballot in August and November, but what impact will the elections upcoming have on the session to begin soon?
Oh, what impact indeed. So what will basically happen is that, people in the House, I'm going to be on your ballot for like the 1 millionth time, and that is the way that it should be, right? Is that the House is always running for office. We run every 2 years. And so what you will find in election years is that it will be a much, much shorter session even than the last session. Usually odd number sessions are long. You have to give all of these new legislators and freshmen, time to figure out how everything works. But election year sessions are shorter. In the House, we have 2 Republicans who are running against each other for Secretary of State. So anytime elections-related bills come up, they will be politicized anyway, but it will take a very long time to have those discussions. And, in Senator Corson's chamber, bless his heart, who isn't running for governor that is in this? But there are 3 serious gubernatorial candidates, at least maybe more. Yeah, no. Yeah, so there are 3 gubernatorial candidates there. You've got, let's see, our Speaker of the House is running for statewide office. So all of a sudden, they're not thinking about their district. They're thinking about how they look in the rest of Kansas, right? And this is, it's by design. You're literally running for a statewide office. So that approach is going to change. So since it's uncomfortable and weird, I bet we get out of there as soon as we possibly can. Also, keep in mind, we cannot raise money during session, or rather we can't raise money from, most sources ethically. And so the shorter session is, the more people can raise money. So it will be short, it'll be weird, and you'll be glad when it's over, and so will I.
Yeah, I had heard, I don't know if other colleagues, that there was even talk this session would end in late March. That would be a lot earlier than usual. I'm sort of dubious that we'll be able to do that, but I had at least heard that idea, that was the aspiration, was to have sine die by late March, basically to go in, pass a budget, and then adjourn. But we'll see. Okay.
Yeah, I might just add that we've already gotten the calendar for this year, and I believe we're supposed to be out April the 11th. That's the 90 days. They're counting Saturdays and Sundays when we're not even in Topeka as work days. So, yeah, it's going to be a short session. And it's it'll be interesting. We also get about 2.5 weeks off in March, and this is by constitution. This has always been. I assume that this was probably put in when farmers had to get home and plant. So I'm planning to plant our side yard in hemp this year, and declare that agricultural property now. So, but yeah, it's. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. So anyway, it is going to be a short session, and I think they want to get out of there just as quickly as possible.
Okay. Among the many concerns in at this time when there's a major assault on science, that's really pretty much across the spectrum. I think healthcare, in its broadest sense, is also under attack, and actually ranging from SNAP benefits that are at risk. To the education, the University of Kansas, I think, is having a terrible time with respect to grants for science that are being interfered with. The students at all levels, both medical students and other students, occupational therapy students, physical therapy students, find that there's a shrinkage of the loans that they can get. But I'm most concerned about nursing homes and hospitals, particularly those who rely upon Medicaid monies and the ones that are safety net. And it appears that they are going to really be scrambling in 2026. I was wondering at the state level, what can be done to be helpful to them?
Well, I can talk to that because just yesterday I met with 3 other people about nursing home and assisted living facilities in the state of Kansas. One of the people I met with, he's a former KU professor, and he has been working nationwide on this particular issue. He was, for the last 4 years, working with people at Berkeley, with NYU, an accounting firm in Denver. So it's not just a Kansas problem, it's a nationwide problem, and it's a very severe problem in Kansas. I swear, most of the nursing homes and assisted living homes that are being purchased in Kansas are really real estate deals. They're not providing great service for the people who need those kinds of services. So I do think, and one of the problems is getting financial information from these organizations that are buying these nursing and assisted living homes. So we're looking at working with this group to try and figure out what kind of legislation we can submit to try to make obtaining financial information available to us so that we can make decisions on how to fund our nursing home and special and assisted living facilities, and because it is a very serious problem, and so we are addressing that, or we're hoping to address that, and hopefully something in this session.
So thank you for the question. Good to see you this morning. Years ago, we had an interim committee on long-term care facility reimbursement rates. And it was at that committee that the lack of transparency with the finances in a lot of long-term care homes came to the attention of the committee. We asked for a legislative audit to dive into, why can't we see where these tax dollars are going? And as far as I know, nothing ever became of it. But as far as what the state could do, I know that the homes themselves have come to the state and asked for, higher reimbursement rates to where folks that are relying upon the Medicare payments aren't in competition with, private pay. So, and how that's impacted, now moving forward with the cuts from the feds, it's probably just going to make a bad situation worse.
We have a couple of questions from our folks online as well. Alrighty, one of the questions we have is just wondering if y'all can speak a little bit more on redistricting and any possible redistricting efforts that are going to be coming up here the next session.
And I can talk about this again. So right now, we have not seen any bills introduced. The Speaker and the Senate President have not put together a new redistricting committee. Usually, we get our committees put together usually about this time of year, right after an election. But if they're not putting together a redistricting committee, that doesn't necessarily mean we're not doing it, but it's still a sign. I was in a forum with a Republican colleague, I believe on Tuesday night, and he's one of the people who did not sign the letter, the petition, I guess, to start the special session. And he would be under tremendous pressure, right? He said the chances of it happening are minimal. Even Senator Jerry Moran has come out against mid-decade redistricting. And Senator Moran is a very pragmatic person. He does not make rash moves. He doesn't say anything unless he knows for sure. All of those signs point to, why do I sound like a magic 8-ball? All signs point to no. But all signs point to no. That now, no doesn't mean never, but basically they have the votes in the Senate. They don't have the votes in the House. They tried. It didn't work. Our very well-respected U.S. Senator, our Republican U.S. Senator has spoken out against this. I'd say we've got about a 15% chance.
Yeah, and part of the reason too is there are 10 Republicans reportedly who didn't sign the petition to draw us back into special session. They've already been punished for it. They've been removed from their vice chairmanships or their chairmanships. And so what incentive do they have to flip their vote? They've already been punished. They're just going to keep their vote. In addition to the rumors that there are probably another 10 or 15 Republicans who signed, but signed for other reasons that they actually don't like the map. And all of this is before any of us have actually seen the map. Once they see the map, they're like, oh, that actually draws me in with that part of Johnson County. Like, I don't want any part of that. So I agree. The chances do seem a little minimal.
All right. Are we good? All right. We will leave it there. We will be back in January. One of the things, though, before everybody leaves for our 5th anniversary, we really wanted to get a picture of everybody, especially since we have such a good crowd. So we want to see if people kind of fill in on this side. We wanted to do a picture for everybody who's willing to be in it. It would mean a lot. So just want to commemorate 5 years.